9 men disappeared in a single night. No bodies, no witnesses, no investigation, just gone, erased from existence like they'd never drawn breath. The question that sealed their fate, 4 words spoken in a supply closet by Boston's most dangerous man. Who did this to you? Naomi Carter wasn't supposed to survive that parking garage. She worked 80-hour weeks as an event coordinator at the Grandview Hotel in downtown Boston, the kind of place where senators held fundraisers and old money pretended new money didn't exist. 27 years old, exhausted down to her bones, and trapped in a life where every dollar went to her 12-year-old sister's leukemia treatment. Lily needed her. That's what mattered. Everything else was noise. October 14th started like any other crushing shift. Naomi had coordinated a political gala for 300 guests, Senator Richard Caldwell's re-election campaign. 12 hours of smiling through condescension from people who wouldn't remember her name. By 11 p.m., she was the last one out, hauling equipment to the loading dock. That's when Ethan Caldwell cornered her. The senator's son, 29, Harvard-educated and convinced the world owed him whatever he wanted. He'd been drinking all night, watching her work, making comments that crawled under her skin. Need help with that? His voice echoed through the concrete levels of the parking garage. Naomi kept walking. I'm good, thanks. Come on, don't be like that. Footsteps behind her, faster now. I've been trying to talk to you all night. She reached her car and turned, keeping the equipment cart between them. I appreciate it, but I really need to get home. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. You know who my father is, right? There it was, the threat wrapped in a question. Naomi had heard it 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways from people like him. The ones who'd never been told no, never faced consequences, never had to consider that other people were human. I do, she said carefully. Have a good night, Mr. Caldwell. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. I'm not done talking to you. What happened next came in fragments. Naomi pulling away, Ethan's grip tightening, her knee coming up in defense, his fist connecting with her face, once, twice, a third time, the concrete rushing up to meet her, boots finding her ribs, laughter echoing from somewhere above, other men watching, doing nothing. Then darkness. When consciousness returned, Naomi was slumped behind her car, blood pooling beneath her cheek. Pain radiated from everywhere. Her left eye was swollen shut, ribs screaming. She needed to move, get help, call someone. But who? The police? Ethan's father controlled half the department. A lawyer. With what money? Lily's treatment already drowned them. The hospital. They'd ask questions she couldn't answer without destroying the only income keeping her sister alive. So Naomi did what powerless people do. She dragged herself upright, drove home with one functioning eye, and told herself she'd figure it out tomorrow. Tomorrow she'd be stronger. Tomorrow she'd have a plan. Tomorrow became 3 days of lying to Lily, hiding bruises under makeup, and swallowing painkillers just to stand upright. If you're hooked by dark romance and stories where justice comes from unexpected places, hit that subscribe button, because this tale is just getting started. Now, let me tell you about the man who changed everything. Dominic Vale wasn't supposed to be at the Grandview Hotel that Tuesday afternoon. He owned half of Boston's underground, gambling, protection, imports nobody asked questions about. At 32, he'd inherited an empire built on fear and maintained it through calculated violence. People crossed the street when they saw him coming. Politicians returned his calls within minutes. Police knew better than to look too closely at his operations. The Grandview was hosting preliminary meetings for a waterfront development deal. Dominic had legitimate investments now, the kind that came with board seats and tax attorneys. He was washing blood money clean, one real estate contract at a time. But legitimacy was boring. He'd stepped away from the conference room, irritated by men in expensive suits who talked too much and said nothing. The hotel's back corridors were quiet. Dominic preferred quiet. It's where you heard things that mattered. That's when he heard her. A muffled sound from the supply closet near the service elevator. Not quite a sob, more like someone trying very hard not to make noise. Dominic had heard that sound before. People made it when they were hurt but couldn't afford to show weakness. He opened the door. Naomi was crouched between shelving units, one hand pressed against her ribs, the other holding a phone she couldn't seem to dial. Makeup couldn't hide the damage anymore, her left eye swollen into a purple-black mass, split lip, finger-shaped bruises around her throat. She looked up, and Dominic saw something he recognized. The expression of someone who'd already decided they didn't matter enough to save. "You need a hospital." His voice came out softer than intended. Naomi scrambled back, panic flooding her features. "I'm fine, just needed a minute." "You're not fine." Dominic crouched down, keeping distance between them. "Who did this?" "Nobody, I fell." He'd heard that lie before too. Try again. Something shifted in her eyes, a flash of anger that cut through the fear. Good. Anger meant she wasn't broken yet. "Why do you care?" Her words came out sharp. Honest question. Dominic had witnessed worse violence and walked past without a second thought. He'd ordered worse himself. But something about this woman bleeding in a supply closet, still trying to work, still lying to protect herself because she had no other option. It ignited something he thought he'd buried years ago. "Maybe I'm curious," he said. "I can't afford curious." Naomi tried to stand, winced, and nearly collapsed. Dominic caught her before she hit the floor. Up close, he could see more damage, defensive wounds on her forearms, bootprint bruises on her collarbone. This wasn't random violence. Someone had meant to hurt her badly. "Let me go," but she didn't pull away because she couldn't. In a minute, Dominic pulled out his phone with his free hand. "I'm calling my doctor. He'll come here, no hospitals, no records, no questions." "I can't pay." "Did I ask you to pay?" Naomi stared at him like he was speaking another language. In her world, nothing came free. Everything cost something. "Who did this to you?" Dominic asked again, quieter now. The question hung between them. Outside, the hotel continued its expensive hum. Deals were made. Money changed hands. People moved through their lives completely unaware that in this supply closet, something irreversible was beginning. Naomi's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Ethan Caldwell." 4 syllables that would end. Dominic's expression didn't change, but Naomi felt the temperature in the supply closet drop 10 degrees. "Senator Caldwell's son," he said, not a question. She nodded, already regretting the admission. "Please, I shouldn't have said anything. Just forget." "Where did it happen?" "It doesn't matter." "Naomi." He'd pulled her name from her employee badge. "Where?" Something in his tone made lying impossible. "Parking garage. 3 nights ago, after his father's fundraiser." "Was he alone?" The question caught her off guard. She'd been trying to forget the details, not catalog them. But now, forced to remember, she saw them clearly, the shapes in the shadows above, watching. "No, 8 others, maybe 9, standing on the upper level." Her throat tightened. They watched, some of them laughed. Dominic was already typing on his phone. "The hotel has security footage." "I'm sure it's been erased by now." His father doesn't control everything." Dominic made a call, speaking in clipped tones to someone named Marcus. "Grandview Hotel, parking garage, October 14th between 11 p.m. and midnight. Every camera angle. I don't care what the official logs say, find the backups." He hung up and turned his attention back to her. "Why didn't you report it?" Naomi let out a bitter laugh that hurt her ribs. "Report it to who? The police commissioner plays golf with Senator Caldwell. I'm nobody. He's untouchable." "Nobody's untouchable." The certainty in those words sent chills down her spine. Naomi had spent 3 days convincing herself that survival meant silence, that keeping her job and her sister's treatment was worth swallowing this pain. But Dominic Vale was looking at her like she mattered, like what happened to her actually counted for something. "I have a sister," she heard herself say. "Lily, she's 12, leukemia. I can't lose this job, the insurance covers her treatment, if I make waves. If I accuse someone like Ethan Caldwell, I'll be fired, blacklisted, and Lily will die because I couldn't keep my mouth shut." Understanding crossed Dominic's face. "That's why you're still here, still working. That's why I'm still breathing." A knock on the door interrupted them. An older man with silver hair and a medical bag entered, the doctor, apparently. He took one look at Naomi and got to work without asking questions. Dominic stepped back, making another call while the doctor examined her. Naomi caught fragments of conversation. Background check on Ethan Caldwell. Everyone who was there. Full list by tonight. 3 cracked ribs, the doctor announced, wrapping her torso. Severe bruising, minor concussion. The eye will heal, but you need rest. I have a shift in 2 hours. You have a medical leave starting now, Dominic cut in. I'll handle it. You can't just. Watch me. He was already dialing the hotel manager's direct line. Naomi wanted to argue, to explain that she couldn't afford his help, that accepting it would create debts she'd never repay. But exhaustion was winning. The pain medication the doctor had given her was pulling her under. "Why are you doing this?" she managed. Dominic looked at her for a long moment. "Because someone should have asked you that question 3 days ago. Who did this to you? Someone should have cared about the answer." His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus got the footage. "You need to see this." Everything was about to change. Dominic watched the security footage in his car, parked 3 blocks from the Grandview. Marcus had sent it to his encrypted tablet, 12 minutes of crystal-clear video that Senator Caldwell's people thought they'd erased. They hadn't counted on Marcus being better at digital forensics than their IT team. The footage started innocently enough. Naomi loading equipment onto a cart, exhausted but efficient. Then Ethan Caldwell entering the frame, stumbling drunk, aggressive from the first moment. What came next made Dominic's jaw clench. Ethan grabbing her, Naomi defending herself, his fist connecting with her face once, twice, 3 times, her body hitting concrete, boots finding ribs, and above on the upper level 8 men watching, 1 filming on his phone, 2 laughing, the rest just standing there doing absolutely nothing. Dominic recognized some of them, campaign staffers, a junior congressman, 2 lawyers from a firm that handled Caldwell family business, men who should have stopped it and chose entertainment instead. The video ended with Ethan walking away, high-fiving one of his friends. Naomi lay motionless for 4 minutes before dragging herself upright. Dominic made a call. "Anthony, I need locations on 9 people by tonight." Anthony Russ handled Dominic's more delicate operations, the kind that never appeared in police reports. Names. Dominic rattled off the list, starting with Ethan Caldwell. "And I need the Caldwell family schedule. Who's where, when they're vulnerable, what matters to them." "Should I ask what this is about?" "No." "Time frame?" 24 hours. Anthony whistled low. "That's aggressive even for you." "They put hands on someone under my protection." The words came out before Dominic fully processed them. Under his protection. When had he decided that? Somewhere between finding Naomi bleeding in a supply closet and watching her get beaten on camera, she'd become his responsibility. "Understood," Anthony said. "I'll have everything by midnight." Dominic's next call went to his lawyer. "I need a promotion arranged at the Grandview Hotel. Events coordinator position, significant pay increase, better insurance coverage. Make it look organic." "For who?" "Naomi Carter. Current employee, excellent record. Make sure the new benefits package covers specialized medical care, specifically pediatric oncology. His lawyer knew better than to ask questions. Consider it done. The third call was more delicate. Dominic dialed a number he rarely used, Detective Sarah Chen, one of the few cops in Boston who wasn't on anyone's payroll. "This is unexpected," Chen answered. "I need information on Senator Richard Caldwell, specifically anything that could damage him, financially, legally, politically." Silence. Then, why? "His son put a woman in the hospital. 9 witnesses did nothing. I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again." "Dominic, if you're planning what I think you're planning." "You don't know what I'm planning." "Promise me something," Chen said carefully. "Whatever you do, make sure there's no blowback on the victim. People like Caldwell retaliate." "There won't be any victim left to retaliate against. By the time I'm done, she'll be untouchable." After hanging up, Dominic sat in the silence of his car, watching the security footage loop. Each replay stoked something dark and familiar inside him, the part of himself he tried to bury under legitimate business deals and board meetings. But perhaps that darkness had a purpose after all. Perhaps some people needed to be reminded that power wasn't absolute, that actions had consequences, that sometimes justice came from unexpected places, delivered by men who understood violence as a language. 9 men had made a choice that night in the parking garage. Now Dominic would make. By midnight, Dominic had everything he needed. Anthony's report laid out 9 lives in excruciating detail. Ethan Caldwell lived in a penthouse paid for by his father, drove a car worth more than most people's houses, and had 3 prior assault complaints that mysteriously disappeared. His friends were equally insulated, trust fund kids and political climbers who'd never faced real consequences. That was about to change. Dominic assembled his team in a warehouse he owned near the harbor. 6 men who'd worked for him for years, loyal not because he paid well, though he did, but because he kept his word and protected his people. "Nobody dies," he said, spreading files across the table. "But they disappear, completely. I want them gone from Boston, terrified to come back and broken enough that they'll never touch another woman." Marcus looked up from his laptop. "The senator will mobilize everything to find his son." "Let him." Dominic's smile held no warmth. "I've already arranged insurance." The insurance came in the form of a file Detective Chen had delivered an hour ago. Senator Caldwell had been taking bribes from construction companies for 15 years, funneling money through shell corporations. Chen couldn't use it officially. The chain of evidence was too compromised, but Dominic could. "If Caldwell pushes too hard, this goes to the media," he explained. "His entire career evaporates. He'll take the deal I offer." "Which is?" "His son disappears quietly. No investigation, no questions. In exchange, I don't destroy everything Richard Caldwell has built." Anthony studied the photographs of Ethan and his friends. "When?" "Tonight, all 9 simultaneously. I want them picked up, driven to separate locations and given a choice. Leave Boston forever, or I release everything I have on them to their families, employers, and the press." "And if they refuse?" Dominic's expression went cold. "Then they learn what it feels like to be powerless." The operation began at 2 a.m. Ethan Caldwell was grabbed outside a club in the Back Bay, his bodyguard neutralized with a taser. The junior congressman was taken from his apartment. The campaign staffers were collected one by one, none of them suspecting anything until hands closed around their arms and voices told them to walk quietly. By 4 a.m., 9 men sat in separate locations across the city, each guarded by Dominic's people, each realizing their phones were gone and nobody was coming to save them. Dominic visited Ethan personally. The senator's son was zip-tied to a chair in an abandoned building, his earlier bravado evaporating when he recognized who'd walked through the door. You know who my father is? Ethan's voice shook. I do. Dominic pulled up a chair. Do you know who I am? Recognition dawned, followed by terror. Everyone in Boston knew Dominic Vale's reputation. I didn't, whatever you think I did. Dominic pulled out his tablet and played the parking garage footage. Watched Ethan's face go pale as he saw himself beating Naomi, heard his own laughter, witnessed his friends cheering him on. That woman has a 12-year-old sister with leukemia, Dominic said quietly. She works 80 hours a week to keep her alive, and you put her in the hospital because she said no to you. It was just I was drunk. Here's what happens next. Dominic leaned forward. You have two choices. One, you leave Boston tonight, never come back, and live the rest of your life knowing I'm watching. Two, this video goes to every news station in the country, along with documentation of every law your father broke to protect you. What would you do if you held that kind of power? Drop a comment below. I'm curious what justice means to you. Now back to what happened next. Ethan chose exile. They all did. By dawn, 9 men had been driven to different airports, bus stations, and train depots. Each carried a single bag and a new understanding of how quickly privilege could evaporate. Each knew that returning to Boston meant destruction, not just legal consequences, but the kind of ruin that followed when Dominic Vale decided you were a problem. The junior congressman was heading to his family's compound in Montana. 2 campaign staffers bought one-way tickets to Seattle. The lawyers were bound for different cities. Their partnerships dissolved overnight. Ethan Caldwell boarded a private plane to London, his trust fund suddenly inaccessible, his father's protection withdrawn. Senator Richard Caldwell received a phone call at 6 a.m. Your son is alive and unharmed, Dominic said without preamble. He's leaving the country. You'll receive proof of life once daily. If you try to find him, if you send anyone after him, I release files that end your career. You can't. I already have. This conversation is a courtesy. Dominic's voice remained calm. Here's what happens now. You accept that your son made a mistake and is facing consequences. You don't investigate. You don't retaliate. You tell people he's taking time abroad to find himself. And if I refuse, then everyone learns how you've been taking construction bribes since 2010. Your marriage ends when your wife discovers the mistress in Cambridge. Your political allies abandon you when they see which votes you sold. By noon, you're finished. Silence stretched across the line. Dominic could hear Caldwell's breathing, the sound of a powerful man realizing his power had limits. The woman he hurt, Caldwell finally said. What does she want? She wants her sister to live. She wants to work without fear. She wants men like your son to stop existing. Dominic's tone hardened. You don't get to negotiate with her. This is between us. I could have you arrested. You could try, but we both know half the police force won't touch me, and the other half is smart enough not to. Take the deal, Senator. Be grateful I'm offering one. The line went dead. Dominic drove to Naomi's apartment in Dorchester as the sun rose. She lived in a 4th-floor walk-up, the kind of building where the heat worked intermittently and the neighbors pretended not to hear things. Her door had 3 locks. She answered on the 4th knock, still moving carefully, the bruises on her face shifting from purple to yellow. How did you find my address? But she didn't seem angry, just resigned to the fact that men like Dominic could find anything. Can I come in? Naomi hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was small but meticulously clean. Medical bills covered the kitchen table. A child's drawings decorated the refrigerator, Lily's artwork, hopeful scenes of beaches and sunshine. Ethan Caldwell is gone, Dominic said. Him and everyone who was there that night. They won't be coming back. She stared at him. What did you do? What needed to be done? That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Dominic pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is your new employment contract. Senior Events Director at the Grandview, triple your current salary, full benefits that cover specialized medical care including pediatric oncology. Naomi's hands shook as she opened it. I didn't ask for this. You shouldn't have to ask. Why? Her voice cracked. Why are you doing this? People like you don't help people like me. There's always a price. Dominic met her eyes. Maybe I'm tired of watching the wrong people win. Naomi didn't trust it at first. The promotion felt like a trap. The salary increased too generous, the timing too convenient. She kept waiting for Dominic to demand something in return. Her silence, her loyalty, something darker she didn't want to name. But weeks passed, and he asked for nothing. She returned to work with better insurance, a corner office, and colleagues who suddenly treated her with respect. Nobody mentioned Ethan Caldwell. The parking garage incident might as well have never happened. Lily's treatment continued without interruption. The new insurance covered experimental therapies the old plan had denied. Her sister's oncologist called it miraculous. The way doors suddenly opened, the way specialists returned calls, the way clinical trials accepted her application overnight. Naomi knew it wasn't miraculous. It was Dominic. She saw him occasionally at the hotel, always professional, never mentioning that night in the supply closet. He'd nod in passing, ask if she needed anything, then disappear into meetings with men in expensive suits. But she felt his presence everywhere. The security guard who walked her to her car each night, the maintenance request that got handled within hours instead of weeks, the vendor who suddenly offered bulk discounts on event supplies. Dominic Vale had woven a net of protection around her, invisible but absolute. It terrified her. You need to stop, she told him one evening in November, cornering him near the conference rooms. He raised an eyebrow. Stop what? Whatever this is, the security, the favors, she gestured helplessly. I can't owe you this much. You don't owe me anything. That's not how this works. People like you don't do things for free. Maybe you don't know people like me as well as you think. I know enough. I know what you did to Ethan and his friends. I know they're gone because of one conversation. Her voice dropped. I know you're dangerous. Yes, he agreed simply, I am. The honesty caught her off guard. Most men like him hid behind respectability, denied the violence everyone knew they committed. Then why, she pressed, why help me? Dominic was quiet for a long moment, and Naomi saw something flicker across his face, something almost vulnerable. My mother was a housekeeper, he said finally, worked for a family in Beacon Hill. When I was 8, the family's son cornered her in the laundry room, did things he shouldn't have done. She reported it and they fired her, blacklisted her. We ended up in Southie barely eating. Naomi's breath caught. She never recovered, Dominic continued. Depression took her when I was 12, and I spent 20 years building enough power to make sure people like that family's son couldn't do it again. He met her eyes. So when I found you in that supply closet, I saw my mother, and this time I could actually do something about it. The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Naomi had assumed his motivation was power or control or some complicated game she didn't understand. She hadn't considered it might be personal. I'm sorry, she said quietly, about your mother. Don't be sorry, just let me help. By making people disappear. By making sure you're safe. A group of hotel executives passed, and the moment broke. Dominic's expression shuddered back into professional distance. Think about it, he said, then walked away. Naomi stood in the empty corridor processing what she'd learned. Dominic Vale was violent, ruthless, and absolutely terrifying. But he'd also saved her life. And somehow, that made everything more complicated. December brought snow and complications. Lily's latest scan showed improvement. The experimental treatment was working. Her oncologist used words like remission and hopeful prognosis that made Naomi cry in the hospital bathroom. For the first time in 2 years, her sister might actually survive. Then the bills arrived. Except they didn't. The hospital's billing department claimed everything was covered, but Naomi had read her insurance policy cover to cover. These treatments exceeded her maximum by hundreds of thousands of dollars. She knew exactly who was paying the difference. "You have to stop," she told Dominic when she tracked him down at his office downtown. The building was all steel and glass, the kind of place where legitimate business happened on upper floors while everyone pretended not to know what occurred in the basement. His assistant tried to stop her, but Dominic waved him off. Let her in. His office overlooked the harbor, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a city he essentially owned. Naomi threw the hospital statement on his desk. "This is too much. I can't accept this." Dominic barely glanced at the papers. "Your sister deserves treatment." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" He stood, moving around the desk. "That you're uncomfortable, that accepting help feels like weakness, that you'd rather watch Lily die than owe me something." The words hit like a slap. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Naomi. You didn't deserve what happened in that parking garage. Lily doesn't deserve leukemia, and I don't deserve to have enough money to help and not use it." His voice gentled. "Why is it so hard for you to let someone care?" "Because people don't care without wanting something back." "What do you think I want?" The question hung there, loaded and dangerous. Naomi had been asking herself the same thing for weeks. What did Dominic Vale want from her? "I don't know," she admitted. "That's what scares me." He moved closer, and she didn't step back. Up close, she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the way his jaw tightened when he was holding something back. "I want you safe," he said quietly. "I want your sister healthy. I want you to sleep without nightmares. I want you to walk through parking garages without fear." He paused. "And maybe I want to prove that not every man in your life is going to hurt you." Something shifted in Naomi's chest, a crack in the armor she'd built around herself since that night. Dominic was dangerous, yes. He'd made 9 men disappear, controlled an empire built on violence, and probably did things she was better off not knowing about. But he'd also found her bleeding and broken, and decided she mattered. "What if I can't give you anything in return?" she whispered. "I'm not asking you to. Everyone asks eventually." "Then I'll be the exception." Dominic's hand came up, hovering near her face but not touching. "You don't owe me, Naomi. Not money, not loyalty, not anything. If you want me gone, I'm gone. If you want me to stop paying Lily's bills, I'll stop. But if you want someone in your corner who will burn the world down before letting anyone hurt you again, I'm here." Snow fell outside, blanketing the city in white. Inside, Naomi made a choice that would change everything. "Stay," she said. Staying turned into coffee meetings that became dinners. Dinners became late-night conversations where Naomi learned that Dominic took his coffee black, hated pretentious restaurants, and had read every book she mentioned just to understand her better. He was patient in ways that surprised her. Never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel like the debt she couldn't name was coming due. When she flinched at sudden movements, he slowed down. When nightmares woke her at 3 a.m., he answered his phone on the first ring and talked until she could breathe again. "Tell me about Lily," he said one evening in January. They were in his apartment, a penthouse that was surprisingly understated, more books than expected, less ostentatious than she'd imagined. Naomi smiled, the genuine kind she hadn't felt in months. "She's stubborn, wants to be a marine biologist even though she's terrified of deep water, makes terrible jokes, believes in people way too easily." "Sounds like someone I know." "I don't believe in people easily." "You believed in me." Dominic's gaze was steady. "Eventually." She had. Somewhere between December and January, between hospital visits where Lily asked about the nice man who sent flowers and security guards who made sure she got home safely, Naomi had stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dominic wasn't going to hurt her. He was incapable of it, at least when it came to her. "Your world is dangerous," she said, because they both knew it was true. "It is. People want to kill you. Some do. And being close to you puts a target on my back." Dominic's expression hardened. "Anyone who touches you dies. That's not a threat or bravado, it's a promise. You're protected better than the president. I've made sure of it." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. "What happens when this ends?" Naomi asked quietly. "When you get bored or find someone more interesting or—" "It's not going to end." The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. "You can't know that. I know that I've spent 32 years not caring about much beyond power and survival. Then I found you bleeding in a supply closet and suddenly nothing else mattered." Dominic moved closer. "You think this is temporary, that what I feel is going to fade? Naomi, I made 9 men disappear because they hurt you. I've restructured my entire security operation around keeping you safe. I think about you constantly, whether you've eaten, if you're sleeping, if something I did made you smile." Her breath caught. "That sounds obsessive, intense, completely irrational." He smiled slightly. "It is, but that's what happens when someone like me decides to care. We don't do anything halfway." Naomi should have been frightened. Any rational person would have run from a man who described feelings in terms of obsession and restructured security operations. But she'd stopped being rational somewhere around the third time Dominic paid Lily's hospital bills without being asked. "I'm not easy to love," she said. "I'm not easy to love either. Maybe that's why this works." Dominic closed the distance between them, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. His kiss was gentle, nothing like the violence she knew he was capable of, everything like the protection she'd felt since that day in the supply closet. When they broke apart, Naomi whispered, "I'm still scared." "Of me? Of how much I want this?" "Then be scared," Dominic said, "but be scared with me." Spring arrived with Lily's remission. Full remission. The words Naomi had been afraid to hope for became reality in a sterile hospital room with her sister grinning despite the exhaustion. The oncologist called it remarkable. Naomi called it a miracle funded by a man who decided her family mattered. Dominic was there when they got the news, standing in the hallway like he'd always belonged. Lily hugged him first, 12 years old and finally believing she had a future. "Thank you," the girl whispered into his chest. Over her head, Dominic met Naomi's eyes. The look said everything words couldn't. 6 months after that night in the parking garage, Naomi's life was unrecognizable. She ran the events division at the Grandview with confidence she'd earned. Lily attended regular school instead of hospital tutoring. The apartment in Dorchester was replaced by a townhouse in a neighborhood where locks were optional. And Dominic was woven into every part of their lives, helping Lily with homework, showing up at school events, teaching her terrible card games that made her laugh. "You're good with her," Naomi observed one evening, watching them argue over poker rules. "She's easy to be good with." Dominic glanced up. "Smart kid, reminds me of her sister." Lily rolled her eyes dramatically. "Are you two going to get married or what? Because the tension is killing me." "Lily," Naomi felt heat flood her face. "What? I'm in remission, not blind." Her sister gathered the cards. "I'm going to my room so you can have your mushy conversation. Don't do anything I wouldn't do." When she was gone, Dominic laughed, a genuine sound Naomi had learned to treasure because it was so rare. "She's not wrong," he said. "About the tension." Dominic pulled a small box from his pocket. "I was planning something more romantic, but your sister just destroyed the element of surprise." Naomi's heart stopped. "Is that A ring, yes. He opened it, revealing a simple diamond that caught the light perfectly. I know we've only been together 6 months. I know my world is dangerous and complicated. I know you have every reason to say no. Dominic, but I also know that I've never wanted anything the way I want a life with you. Marriage, future, everything. His voice was steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. Marry me, Naomi. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure you and Lily are safe, loved, and never afraid again. She should have hesitated, should have considered the implications, the danger, the reality of marrying Boston's most feared crime lord. Instead, she thought about the man who'd found her broken and decided she was worth saving, who paid her sister's medical bills without asking for gratitude, who disappeared 9 men because they'd hurt her and never once made her feel like she owed him. Yes, Naomi said. The relief on Dominic's face was worth everything. They married quietly in May, just family and a few trusted friends. Senator Caldwell sent an expensive gift and a note that said simply, "Congratulations." His son remained in London, a ghost story people occasionally mentioned and quickly forgot. 9 men had vanished because Dominic asked one question in a supply closet: "Who did this to you?" The answer had changed everything. If this story grabbed you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales where justice comes from unexpected places. What would you do if you had Dominic's power? Drop your thoughts below. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones fighting for those who can't fight for themselves.